Transport, Mr. Poor Peters, and three other panel members who represent various aspects of transport. We've got Sanral, we've got the acting DG, and also Prasa here today. So we want to hear what your thoughts are at home and also the audience that we have here. In fact, let's go straight to our audience, and we've got Irvin Makanya on table number 11 who has something to say.
Yes, Minister. My question is on the billboard that reads "E-tolls, proudly brought to you by the ANC." Sorry to take you back, but your reaction to that, please. Thank you.
Minister?
That is the work of cowards. People who don't have the decency to actually acknowledge what the ANC government has delivered in this country and want to focus on one aspect and turn an important infrastructure of the economic hub of South Africa, like the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Program, into a gimmick. And I just want to say, we really don't have time for such people. And they show that they don't have space in South Africa, because why don't they acknowledge all the benefits and all the good things that the ANC has delivered? In fact, we could go on to indicate through the Department of Transport what the ANC government has delivered. If you start from what we have in terms of the infrastructure for aviation, the infrastructure for rail that we have put up in terms of making sure that in Mpumalanga in particular, we remove the coal trucks from the road to make it possible that the people can move freely. It has reduced the accidents, the number of damages that was caused on the road to Witbank. But also in the audience, we've got MECs, we've got DDGs of other
provinces,
modes of transport, of the Department of Transport. We've got here a rail, road, passenger, and aviation, over and above the panel that we have here. That can just give you a list. When we start, we can talk from Cape Town to Messina, the whole day, whole week, and whole year, what we have been able to do. So I'm not going to talk about these people who are faceless. Initially, they didn't even know who they are. Right. Now, suddenly, they want to acknowledge. And let me tell you, these are the people that don't want good things for South Africa.
DG, Elaine Jackson has sent a tweet saying, PE licensing department has been on strike for 6 weeks. No licenses or renewals available. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, that's a serious challenge. I think one of the things we'd want to do in that case, that if people have expired licenses and there's proof that they've been to the driver license testing centers, and I'm sure they would not be given tickets for not carrying valid driver licenses, because there is, in fact, a reason why they've not been serviced with these licenses. It's something that the department, as the Minister said, Chris and his team would look at and would soon see why and what the challenges are. But of course, we will work in trying to make sure that people.
So what happens to these fines, typically, if they can't renew and they're walking around with license discs that are unrenewed? Will they get fined again?
No, they can make representations.
Okay, but that's wasting their time, basically, though, isn't it?
No, I mean, I understand, but the fact of the matter is that there is a strike, and something that I would look at and deal with.
Okay.
But it's unfortunate, but that's how we would really deal with it.
Minister, another question. What will it take for us to have cost-efficient, safe transport system like in other developing countries?
That's a very interesting question, because, like we have indicated, the NDP has given us even the framework to develop the net map, and we are putting together an IMC on transport planning that would also speak to some of those aspects. But the one thing that we have acknowledged, one of the means to make sure that we can actually accelerate the provision of the infrastructure as well as the modes to be able to move people in South Africa is the user pay principle. So we're looking at making it possible that we address that. And I just want to say to you, look at what we have already done now with the system of transportation in terms of the integrated rapid bus networks in the municipalities that or metros that I have mentioned earlier on, and the fact that we are increasing them and we are calling on other municipalities to join in, and we have been able to work through with the support of National Treasury to finance these particular initiatives. Phase 2 of Johannesburg will be done around the 14th, and I would believe that in working together we could actually be able to develop this. But public transport is one of the instruments to make it possible that we improve the lives of the people of South Africa.
Okay, table number 20, is that MF Masitsa? Table number 20.
Thank you, Peter. Honorable Minister, my two questions are questions based in time perspective. ANC, as a corrective administration, was brought to power. Amongst others.
We're going to get another microphone to you, hopefully. That one seems to be challenged.
In 1994, when the ANC was brought to power, its mandate was to rid the country of the remaining vestiges of discrimination. However, to date, when it comes to public transport subsidy, the prime mover of the public accounting for 65%, the taxi industry, does not receive a single cent from the public transport subsidy. We believe and feel that this type of discrimination is unfair. Secondly, the Department of Transport, in time perspective, has been dealing with all stakeholders, save the National Taxi Alliance, another type and kind of discrimination. Whilst one acknowledges that the minister indeed is a quintessential cool cat, she's tough on the outside, but cool on the inside. We would like to know, dear Minister, what is it that the future has in store for us? I thank you.
Okay, Minister, are you discriminating against the taxi industry? You have been charged.
We are not discriminating against the taxi industry, and we acknowledge the important role that the taxi industry is playing in the economy, socio-economic development milieu of South Africa. And we have engaged with the taxi industry. And in fact, for your information, we are planning a national taxi summit. And I believe some of the issues raised by Mr. Masitsa at the back there would be addressed by that particular summit, because we need to look at issues comprehensively. We need to talk to many stakeholders and be able to look at what would be the best model. We're talking integrated transport network. Is it possible to integrate the taxi industry into this integrated public transport network? Is there a possibility in South Africa for automated intermodal ticketing system? Because when you speak about subsidies, it's also related to how we make it possible that we can follow the commuter as opposed to the operator. So it's all those type of things that we need to be able to look into, and it is not something that you can wake up overnight and say, we'll do it. You need to plan for it and be able to look at the funding model and then be able to say this is doable. Already we have started with the taxi industry. The taxi recap was one of the first steps of indicating the importance that government bestow on the taxi industry.
DG, are you having a conversation with the taxi industry to make my driving experience safer? Because if I'm driving at 5 o'clock or in the morning, anything can happen. I've driven literally on a road and I'm seeing a taxi coming in the wrong lane facing me because he's busy jumping to try and get ahead. On Friday, the emergency lane was clogged up and there was an emergency vehicle at the back, and all these taxis, a line of taxis were traveling on the highway in the emergency lane. Are you having this conversation with them?
I think we've been having discussions primarily with Santaco and to an extent with other taxi associations around the issues first raised by Mr. Masitsa, but secondly around the conduct and behavior of the drivers. And one of the issues that has been raised is, along with Satao, is how we deal with this challenge of taxi drivers and the etiquette. It's a whole suite of issues, from not only the driver experience, but also the issue that customers or users of these public transport vehicles experience on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
So those are the issues that...
So my life will improve, Minister?
In fact, over the weekend with the Road Safety Summit, the key stakeholders also represented the taxi industry. And they made an appeal that they need to be helped with skills development, they need to be helped with customer care and a type of training, so that just courtesy and etiquette for the drivers, but also how their rights can be recognized. So it's all part of the package that we'll take to the taxi summit.
They are licensed drivers. When you get a license, you are taught you must stay in your lane.
You know,
This doesn't require skills
you are raising a
development.
very important point, which we have also addressed, and it is the role of the driving schools. Because you could say that is what should have happened, but did it happen? Because sometimes you find that we've got driving schools that actually tells you that when you get to the road, you'll see to finish. For now, you must just get that
You must
license.
drive in any lane you want.
That is why we say the regulation of the driving schools is also an important instrument to deal with, even including road carnages. So the issues related to the training as well, because there is a drive to actually create a taxi training academy where the drivers will be trained. Anybody knows that you are being trained every now and then in your job. And we need to do that for taxi industry. The drivers also need to be given that particular training every now and then, refresher courses, so that they know what is expected
If
of
they
them,
just-
including retraining for
But
driving.
Minister, if they just followed the law, we'd be fine.
That is one thing that we are following, to check also the training. And I mean, we actually made an example of the model that ESCOM is using. You can never drive an ESCOM vehicle if you have not been taken through the ESCOM training itself, and every now and then retraining. So we believe each and every industry must do that. And the taxi industry is not different. We are now saying, we acknowledge the fact that in our country, we might be having people who've got illegal licenses, and we're going after them also. Because the fact that we've got this carnage, and the mistakes that you see on the road, there are various stakeholders that are recording and presenting to us evidence of the wrong things that are happening on the road, not only by the taxi industry. In fact, research has proven, and the stats that we have with RTMC shows that most of the accidents or crashes are not as a result of the taxi industry. So at least sometimes we need to look at the reality. Yes, there are those drivers that responsible route mulao. We can take it that they know, whilst they don't know that they are doing anything wrong.
Go through
So
a red
I'm
light,
saying,
Minister.
I have agreed with the taxi industry leadership that we are going to have the taxi summit. And after the summit, one of the key issues that we are going to deal with is issues related to safer vehicles, but also the driving. And the driver's responsibility, but also the passengers. Passengers are responsible for their own lives. When they see taxi drivers doing wrong, they must take it upon themselves to say, you are not going to do this with my life. We have a good experience over the weekend.
Minister, I've been in taxis and you can't tell these drivers anything. Table number 3, Comfort Ngidi.
Honorable Minister, this question is in particular for the CEO of Sanral, Nazir, as to, are these rumors correct based on facts that you have done a study on Gauteng e-tolling, and the study suggests that 83% will be paying 100 rand, not more than 100 rand, 10% anything between 100 and 200 rand, and less than 2% will be paying between 300 and 400 rand per month. And largely those group will be those who are involved in the business sector. And the likelihood is that that is whatever they pay may be tax deductible anyway.
Yes.
And the other aspect that taxis and buses, is it true that taxis and buses are exempted? If that is true, I'm a bit puzzled then. Which workers are then, because the buses and taxis are meant for workers, which then workers are then opposed to e-tolling if they're exempted? And the last bit, which is close to my heart, is the finalization of the road between Durban and Eastern Cape. The amount of business that we who are based in KZN, we have to do between Durban and Eastern Cape, and the roads traveling through Transkei, the challenges that we have. When are we going to see that road happening?
Thank you for that question, Stingidi. Yes, the public transport is exempted from paying any kind of tolls on the GFIP. This again shows the nature, the caring nature of this particular government, the ANC government, which has taken into account the 65% of the people that we just heard earlier on from the previous gentleman who are traveling by this particular mode, which is the taxi mode. Yes, they are exempted from paying it, because we wanted to make sure that the tariffs which are imposed on people are affordable. And that's why you'll also see that in the last 2 years, how the actual tariffs have been reduced from the original price that we'd announced to the current 30 cents a kilometer, provided you are registered and have an e-tag. So we're trying to make transport as affordable as possible, including for businesses. Because businesses as well, we've introduced a cap for what we call the Class B trucks and the Class C being the largest trucks, a monthly cap of 1750 and of 3,500 rands. The other thing that we need to note, that all this thing, hauliers, first of all, will reclaim the 14% VAT, so they don't actually pay the actual posted tariff over there. And of course, since this is a cost of doing business, it is tax deductible. So that's also another saving that the hauliers will be making in terms of the tariffs that they pay at the end of the day. Secondly, we've also introduced time of day discounts, because what we want to encourage is for the heavy vehicles to be using the roads outside of the peak areas. So there's an additional discount for them as well if they use the roads outside of the peak areas, but that will also reduce further the congestion on the roads, so that the lighter vehicles and people can get to work, whether you're a commuter or a private user of the network. While I've got this opportunity, Peter, I just want to make a point that e-tolling is just a method of collection. It's not. The principle of tolling has always been in existence in South Africa, established through a white paper way back in 1996, and again reaffirmed in the National Development Plan, which has been so enthusiastically adopted and supported by the opposition. Of course, there are some parts of it that not everybody agrees with. There are some parts of the NDP that not everybody agrees with, but on the whole, there is huge support for the NDP, and this has been reaffirmed in this method of funding our infrastructure, and which has been spoken about by our minister earlier. The system that we've introduced in South Africa, the electronic toll collection system, has even won an international prize for the technology that we've introduced in South Africa.
That's because it's
a new
expensive, Nazir.
It's not expensive. 17 cents in the rand is not expensive. If, for instance, the Cape had agreed to adopt this particular technology, they would not have to go and pay 54 million rands to put up a building for the concessionaire on Chapman's Peak. They could have got it cheaper if they had used the electronic toll collection system. This system is interoperable. We can use it anywhere in the country, and as more people come onto the system, the cost of this will reduce, Peter. We've also had people who live in these gated communities now approaching us to use the tags to be able to get access and egress into their properties. It's another safety feature that we have introduced.
All right.
The road that he's spoken about, that is the Wild Coast Toll Road. We are moving on this. We are meeting with the communities again later this month to be able to do the Greenfield section, starting off on the border of the Eastern Cape and KZN, going via Lusikisiki to Port St. John's and then meeting up with the R61. But you may be aware about all the improvements that we are currently making on the N2 as well.
Okay. Saki, I've got a question here from Evans Mapulo, who says, please, when will we get a train in Alexandra Township? And I just wonder if this is a question, is the train network, passenger rail network, going to increase the areas that it will go into as well, not just the quality of the carriages and upgrading the current system, but will it go to other areas as well? And he wants to know, Alexandra, when he'll get a train.
Yeah, no, thanks, Peter. Yes, there are plans to extend the network and even current extensions, but as you would appreciate, the challenge with rail is that it operates better where there are high volumes. So first, we've got to determine that there is high demand and viable to put in a new line. The minister indicated earlier that there's a rail extension done in KZN called Bridseat. It's a 3.5-kilometer line, which includes Kwamashu, Intuzuma, Inanda. So that's one of the new rail extensions. A couple of years ago, there was one in Cape Town, in Khayelitsha, and there's one planned to start in the current financial year in PE, connecting Motherwell, which is about an 8-kilometer extension. So yes, there are plans to extend, but as you would imagine, extension of railways is pretty expensive. So on the two projects I'm talking about, it's about $1 billion that is being spent, including the stations, of course, and other infrastructure associated with it. So yes, depending on the feasibility, there are others that will be considered. But in the short to medium term...
Alexandra, not in the immediate future.
Yes. Again, part of the challenges, as you would have seen, even with the construction of the Gautrain, where there are already settlements involved, moving people and building a rail line becomes also prohibitively expensive. So yes, there are alternatives being looked at, but Alexandra, not in the short term, at least.
All right. Adele Diaga, table number 9. Adele Diaga, table number 9.
Honourable Minister, my question was answered, but still there is a second phase to the question, which will be, at this stage we are travelling from the east and the west rand and already driving on the extended highways and the extended lanes that we've got. Still taking an hour and a half to 2 hours, reaching from the east rand and the west rand to mid rand, which is a lot of time. So time hasn't been saved really by the extended lanes that we are experiencing, already paying toll fees from the East Rand in excess of 24 Rand, getting to Joburg in the mornings, not saving time. So what is our actual saving then? And my second phase would then have been, if the trucks and the heavy traffic could have been off the road in peak times, that would have saved us a lot of time, which you have answered. Thank you.
Okay.
I think I'll hand over that one to Nazir.
Okay, Nazir.
Yes, as the lady said, thank you very much for the question, that we have actually answered that question, and that we've always had this toll road on the N17 between the East Rand and Johannesburg, so that's not the first urban toll road that we got in GFIB, that was one of the earlier ones. And just to make a note that the tags are already in operation on the Platinum Highway in Pretoria and on the N1, where 60,000 people are already using this particular tag.
Okay. Let's go to table number 14, because I think this is an area that we haven't really talked about, but is very important. To William Mupurwana. Can't quite read your name, but if you could just say it.
Mpukhwana.
Okay.
Thanks. My question is in relation to the law enforcement, traffic law enforcement, and the training that is being offered by the traffic law police academies. Are there any interventions that the department is thinking of in terms of training the traffic officers when it comes to law enforcement? Because what we're discovering on the road is that when it comes to law enforcement, there seems to be no understanding or effectiveness. Secondly, the role of our courts in terms of actually assisting the department to execute when the traffic fines or traffic offenses have been committed. Is there any link between the department and the magistrate courts of this country? Thanks.
It's yours.
Okay.
I see there's also Gilberto. Well, I saw him coming in. But I think the two things I would respond to, the two, and ask Gilberto to add. Yes, there are attempts at training. One was the establishment of the National Traffic Police under RTMC to deal with some of these challenges, an institution to begin the process of training. But secondly, the issue around courts in terms of traffic offences. There is that relationship, but that's why we have established ARTO as a system to quickly deal with in the adjudication of road traffic offences, so that you remove the burden from your normal criminal justice system, because you do not want to treat road traffic offences as part of the criminal justice system.
Isn't enforcement the issue when it comes to, we've got 40 people dying a day on our roads. Isn't it just about enforcement? Because at the end of the day, people will take a chance if they know they can get away with it. And what they'll do is, at certain times of the month, they know exactly where the traffic officers are going to be. They go past that point, and then the beamer picks up speed again. So I'm just wondering, should we not be spending more money on enforcement to sort this problem out? Because people left to their own devices will misbehave.
We have identified enforcement. In fact, as part of the road safety strategy, we have identified 3 E's, which is enforcement, engineering, which is what Sanral is doing, but also education. Enforcement, we believe we need to increase the law enforcement officers, because for the more than 10 million cars in this country, we only have about 18,000 or less of the law enforcement officers. And they are overstretched. So we believe we need to increase them and also make it possible that they are well trained and they are given the necessary instruments with the support of the Department of Justice, which also committed itself to making it possible that they can deal with this most serious road transgressions. In fact, they gave an indication that already in this last financial year, they processed more than 15,000 transgressions. So law enforcement, especially the moving violations, the issues that you raise, people see the enforcement area and then they jump it. And that is why people don't understand why the traffic officers would always be hiding themselves, because when people see them, then they start behaving differently. And when they have passed them, then they change their behavior to the recklessness. But we also believe that as part of our road safety strategy, we need to increase the visibility, but also increase our road safety agents who are activists on the road, who would make it possible that they alert people to the need for themselves to respect, comply, and obey the law, but at the same time also understand that by complying, they are actually saving their own lives and the lives of their loved ones, because by being reckless and violating the law, you actually endanger people's lives.
DG, corruption with this law enforcement. You know, they're constantly asking for money for cokes. And
what?
we have senior officials who are hiding in people's houses until the alcohol level is dropped so that they can't be breathalyzed. We've got senior officials allegedly changing their number plates and putting false number plates on their cars. If it's happening at that level, the poor guy on the side of the road, it's the 25th of the month, he's broke. He says, skawari, we'll collect money on the side of the road. How do we deal with corruption? Because it's endemic. I don't know anybody who hasn't had a traffic officer try and solicit a bribe.
Why pay them?
No,
Why
but-
give them?
No, but
That's the question.
because
But I
it's
think the fundamental issue, Peter, for me is that, and it's what we're busy doing. I mean, the team is out there trying to deal with the issues around first corruption, where you would see officers soliciting bribes. But the biggest problem and the biggest challenge is, why do drivers pay these bribes?
because
Why
it's
don't
easy.
you pay why don't you accept?
Because it's easy.
That's the problem. It shouldn't be easy. You shouldn't first commit the moving violations or the traffic offences that people are doing. But nonetheless, the department is busy with attempts in dealing with that, primarily at a number of levels. One is at the DLTC level, but second is, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a number of busts by this task force that's been around trying to deal with these matters. So there are attempts in trying to say, let's rid ourselves of this so that we then have a clean enforcement approach.
It sounds like a good idea, but I just don't think you've got the manpower. We've got laws, and they're brilliant laws, but we see people tweeting, texting, phoning on cell phones right around Johannesburg every single day and acting with
I
impunity.
think in the audience we've got MECs who are actually directly responsible in provinces and overseeing municipalities, and these traffic officers actually report to them, and some of them can give you an indication on what is it that they're doing and what is it that they're going to do.
All right, is MEC for Transport Gauteng here?
No,
Wh-
Limpopo
which-
is here.
From where?
Limpopo.
Limpopo, MEC. Okay, there we go. If you could just stand up, say your name, and give us an indication of how we're dealing with some of these. Because I don't think it's enough to just say to the public, don't pay. Because we've already established the public will take the easiest path. And so it must be on the public officials not to solicit these bribes. What else are you doing to make sure that enforcement is adequate and that we stop this behavior?
Thanks very much, Peter. My name is Masogale Hlagonolo. I'm the MEC responsible for roads and transport in Limpopo. I think the first important point that I need to point out is that the responsibility lies with you and I, not to pay the bribe. That's the starting point. But what we are doing as a province is that we've established a special investigation team that works directly with the other law enforcement agencies to deal with the problem of corruption within the traffic police, including the testing stations. And we've been making very good progress in identifying wrongdoers and punishing them sufficiently. And we think it's a strategy that is producing results. And we are also working closely with municipalities where there are municipal traffic police to identify those wrongdoers and deal with them severely, because if we can't deal with these type of challenges, road fatalities will continue and we'll lose the battle against stopping road crashes. Thanks very much.
Okay.
There's another MEC there who's got his hand up.
Okay. A quick word from which province? Northern Cape.
MEC.
That's a very quiet province.
Peace-loving people.
Thank you, Peter. We are quiet because we are doing the work. Thanks. Two issues that I think we are using to address this matter, not undermining what was said by my colleague from Limpopo. One, it's routine inspections on the road, ensuring that an inspector gets to a point, an inspector assess the motorists that are there to say What is the situation? How were you treated? How were you really handled during this process? Secondly, is the routine of exchanging the pairing of traffic officers on the road. Because as soon as they are closer to each other, working daily with each other, they start to have arrangements in between. Now, changing that from time to time assist them to deal with the issues, because you are not so sure the person that you are paired with is going to collude with you or not. So that assists the process. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much indeed. Let's take a quick break, and then after that, we're going to go to Napo, table number 5, and also some tweets from you at home.